Welcome back to our discussion. Knowing that it's virtually impossible to compete on price versus online retailers, Belencre Bookstores is focusing on developing more unique services to enhance the customer experience upon entering the bookshop. Let's take a look.
It's a common joke among the people here that except for the staff, everything is for sale, should it attract your interest.
One of the great things about bookstores is that they're great exhibition areas. If you see anything you like, then of course I'll let you buy it. I spent good money renting and refurbishing this place after all, so I want everything inside to generate profit.
But there's nothing you can sell in a bookstore that one can't find for less online. Turning a bookstore into an open-air market clearly isn't the way to go. It also isn't what Chen Xiaomin is aiming for.
We offer more than just retail. We're developing other cultural services as well. The customers will only come if we can offer more than just shopping, which they do online.
The bookstore also whips up its own food for hungry customers. Offering more amenities than a traditional bookstore is at the core of Belencre's business model. Chen Xiaomin shops stock gift items and food and provide leisure areas in order to wring out profits from every inch of floor space. Other new bookstores have encountered the same problems that Belencre faces. Yu Wei established One-Way Street Bookstore with a few friends in 2006 and soon felt stiff pressure from online retailers. One-Way Street modified its business model in 2008 and began offering a wider array of services.
One-Way Street used to be a traditional bookstore that simply sold books. But books have always been more than just a commodity to us. We try to provide this special feeling. What you get is so much more than a book. Our biggest advantage is our salons. Over the last 9 years, we've arranged over 640 salons, with a total of over 120,000 guests. We're more like a cultural space than a simple bookstore.
One-Way Street defines itself as a place of literary dialogue. Book sales account for less than 30% of revenues. That's even less than what Belencre earns. One-Way Street and Belencre survive despite heavy pressure from online retailers. They do it by providing services that counter the low prices they could never offer.
So, Professor, how would you describe Belencre's overall business strategy? Because it's known as a bookstore, but right now it makes more money selling coffee and gifts and hosting events rather than actual book selling.
Right. Well, I think, as we've seen from the video, Belencre currently earns about 40% of its revenue from selling books, and the bulk of its revenue actually comes from those cafe services or events. I think this is essentially how commercial bookstores, Belencre and other offline bookstores, are leveraging their strength to compete against online players and to retain their consumers. I think waging a price war against those online guys is almost impossible, given their vastly different cost structures. So to compete and to win out in this market, those offline bookstores will have to engage in this act of differentiation by transforming their mindset from selling books to selling a reading experience or even to selling a lifestyle. then all of a sudden, the decoration of the store, the design, the display, the kind of food you offer, the kind of events you organize, it all become part of this package, right? And this is something that online bookstores are not able to offer, at least at the moment. And actually, Belencre reminds me of another bookstore in Taiwan. It's called Chengpin Bookstore, which has become a cultural landmark in Taiwan. And if you look at the business model of Chengpin, it's essentially a bookstore plus shopping center or shopping mall business model. So the flagship store of Chengpin in Taiwan occupies this 40,000 square meter space, but only 1/4 of that space is used to sell books, and the remaining 3/4 are actually leased out for entertainment. So for diners, supermarkets, restaurants, etc. So this bookstore plus shopping mall business model has been very well perceived, by bookstores here in the Chinese mainland, and they're also considering, taking it here.
So it seems like the very essence, the concept of the bookstore is changing. It's rapidly evolving as we speak. It cannot survive as a standalone bookstore concept anymore, I feel.
I agree with that.
But even so, these tactics are still being employed by other offline bookstores as well. So in a sense, it's not really that unique, because off the top of my head, I can name several bookstores right here in this city, Beijing, who also employ the same tactics. So then how can Belencre sort of differentiate itself from the competition?
So I think there are a number of approaches. One is to focus on brand building and positioning. General bookstores are difficult to distinguish between each other. So I think adding a bit of a main theme would help. So for example, I know there are bookstores that specializes in selling children's books, and they not just sell books, but they also provide so-called, these after-school art classes for their young shoppers. And even, if you look at the coffee business, I know there's a cafe called Garage Cafe, and it's known for entrepreneurship. So people go there to brainstorm on new business ideas and use it as a temporary office. So it's the coffee idea, right? Coffee plus office, and then also use it as a hub to attract, investors and meet investors there. So I think these are different strategies or different ways that you can establish a unique brand, right, and make your shop known to your consumers. And also, I think a second approach is to really focus on your target consumers, know who they are and offer them the kind of books that they're really interested in purchasing. And then this way you can basically establish a long-term relationship with your consumers and increase the stickiness of your consumer base. And also, third thing is to develop this core competency. I think it makes sense for the bookstores to actually invest a portion of their net income into R&Ds, or maybe grooming their own writers, so that way it will allow the bookstore to transform from a distribution center perhaps to a content provider.
So Belencre right now has 15 stores nationwide, and it's still hoping to expand geographically across the nation. Do you think it should standardize its stores in terms of its looks, its titles, or do you think it could localize a little bit more? You talked about niche markets before, so perhaps in Shanghai it should stock more financial books. In Zhejiang, maybe more tourist or cookbooks. What do you think?
Well, I think it depends, Michael. If Belencre is interested in selling a reading experience that's closely tied to the local culture and the local history, then maybe local adaptation is a good idea. But of course, if you do a lot of local adaptation, that's added pressure on your management operations, because the design of the store needs to be different, the management needs to be different, and especially if you supply different books to different bookstores or different food to different bookstores, then it's additional pressure on your logistics and supply.
All right, so even though Belencre and One Way Street are known as bookstores, currently only 30 to 40% of their revenues are generated from actual book selling. Both are looking to expand book selling as a share of revenue. We explore how coming up next.